Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pass the Syrup. We are, I think, at episode 13. We have got a fantastic lineup of people. Pass the Syrup, in case you don't know by now, obviously you're all huge fans. You watch it every week, and I say the same thing every week. Pass the Syrup is basically, we try and dissect all the waffle floating around in agency world, because there's lots of it. The best way to dissect it is with a little bit of syrup. That's how I have my waffles on a Sunday morning with my kids. And so we've got three great guests who are going to dissect a couple of issues for us this week. And we've got a first, another first. I say this most weeks because we're such a new podcast, but we have a first. We have two women on the podcast. Amazing. You can't appreciate how difficult it is to find women put their hand up in their droves to come on. Men are, put me on camera. I want everyone to look at me. Women are just so busy running the world that they don't have time for podcasts, it seems. So it's much more difficult to get them engaged. But we've got two this week, and I think we've got two next week as well, which is amazing. So let's introduce our guests. First, we have Sophie Lang of Lang, Llewellyn and Co. One of my favorite words, Llewellyn. Crazy name. Absolutely love it. Down in Cornwall. 18 years, a letting agent. Also an Arla Property Mark regional executive. Did anyone hear that noise? That is somebody walking into my office whilst we're filming the podcast. Good stuff. Hi. Go away. No, it's not my kids. It's another estate agent. You can talk to them like that. So, Sophie, thanks for being with us. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yes, Llewellyn is very Welsh, and my business partner is extremely Welsh. She couldn't be more Welsh if she tried.
Couldn't be. Okay, all right. So, as a England rugby fan, we'll move straight past that as quickly as possible, because that's not a conversation I want to have on air. Next up, we have Sarah Evans. Sarah is from, well, I mean, the background gives you a clue as to where Sarah might be from. Crdea Lettings and Management, so nearly 20 years in a estate agency, based in Banbury, Oxfordshire, right? Yeah. So I got that from your website, not from LinkedIn. How are you, Sarah?
Yes, very good, thank you. Yes, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. Lovely background. And then finally, we have Mr. Lewis, Daniel Lewis, 15 years in a estate agency. So we've got really good experience in the room. Daniel runs Free Agent 24/7, which I just clearly made a faux pas before we pressed the record button, because I absolutely pigeonholed Daniel into what I thought his agency was. And now I'm going to ask Daniel, how are you? And please set the record straight on Agent 24/7, Free 24/7. Blimey.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. And hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Dan Lewis, Free Agent 24/7. We are an estate agency. Not in the traditional sense as such, Ben, so you're forgiven. It's fine. So yeah, we've got a few twists and turns with how we do things and who we charge, basically. So credit where it's due. Yeah, I'll give you that one, Ben.
Well, thanks, guys. Cheers, Daniel. Thanks for clearing that up. I should have just made that mistake on air. That would have been much funnier for people to laugh at me. But great to have you guys here. Let's dig straight in. So we always start with Sam Offley of Agents Together. So in case anyone isn't familiar with Agents Together, it's a mentor-mentee charity specifically for estate agents. I've been a part of it for a few years or a couple of years now. I think it's a brilliant initiative. People think of mentor-mentee, and I think the biased mindset draws us to be a mentee, I have to be young and a junior and new to the industry. Lots of people with years and years of experience still have mentors to help them in specific areas of business, or maybe actually I've been a mentor for quite a long time, and quite often it can be really great to have some experience for you to vent your frustrations and then try and find a solution. If you're considering it at all, I would recommend speaking to Sam, have a conversation. The commitment is not huge, but it's really fulfilling. But without further ado, let's pass over to Sam and hear what his issue is that he's going to present from his mentees this week.
Hello, Pass the Syrup guests. Now, my question to you this week is, why is it so important to step out of your comfort zone?
So nice, vague questions. Sometimes he's got really specific ones. Sometimes he absolutely throws a curveball with, why should they step out of their comfort zone? Who would like to throw some ideas around first?
Yeah, I mean, your comfort zone is, I'm a perfect example of a comfort zone person. So up until last year, I sat in my comfort zone. I worked for an agency. I did my job well. But I stayed in my comfort zone. And then a lot of people know our story, but we bought out our own agency in November last year. And we took this massive step, me and my business partner, Rhiannon, to buy the agency and take over and put our names above the door. I was petrified because I'm a safe person. I stick to safe things. But Rhiannon's the risk taker. But since then, it's been 8 months. We're now the biggest agent in Cornwall. We have now just opened a brand new sales department, or taken over one that we're now rebranding. There's big things happening in our world, which is super scary, but would never have happened if I'd stayed in my little comfy hole.
And so firstly, congratulations. I didn't know that about your business. That's really, really impressive, bearing in mind it's only August right now. Why? What was it that made you and your partner decide, let's step out of our comfort zone, let's do it?
Rhiannon and I had worked for the company I'd started it in 12 years ago, and she joined me. She'd been working with me for 10 years. We both got kids, families, husbands, and we were just ticking along, and nothing was really changing. We were just kind of ticking along our ideas. We still had to speak to a higher board if we wanted to make any changes. And we wanted to make a difference and actually do things slightly differently. And we were being stopped by doing that from our previous owner, the people who owned us at the time. And I think we just got really tired of it. And COVID, I think if COVID taught us anything, it was like, life is short. You need to do what you need to do. We were both approaching 40. We decided we wanted to take steps and do something for us. And that was taking over the business. Well,
good for you. What a great way to start, stepping out of the comfort zone, get out there and buy a business. Love it. That's the way to go. That's the hardcore level advice we're trying to give on this podcast. Sarah,
I'll follow that with exactly the same. So
well, hold on. Don't think I didn't see you. I saw you put that hand up. I saw as soon as Sophie started speaking, you went. So unless you've been on this podcast, which everyone who has gets the same thing, everyone's wondering, what's he talking about? We don't do hands up. Watkins, I'm talking to you right now. No hands up. So go on, Sarah.
I'd be really good with Chris then, because I love a hand up. No, similar to Sophie. So I only launched my business in November 21. Again, I was working for an agency, was ops manager, but having to pass things through. COVID, actually, I got made redundant. And that was the point where I went, oh my God, what am I going to do? Am I going to get another job? Never thought I'd be able to run my own business because there's so much you have to do. And like Sophie, was very comfortable getting that salary, going home at the end of the day, all those types of things that we think about. But it was actually one of the landlords who I was looking after in the previous company who private messaged me through Facebook and said, if you start your own business, Sarah, I'll happily come along and join you. And I was like, oh, wow. Oh, okay. So someone's actually got confidence in me. Maybe I need to actually take a step out of my comfort zone. And for the last nearly 2 years, I think I've taken a step out of my comfort zone every single day. It's terrifying. I learn something new every day, but I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't have stepped out of that comfort zone and gone, no, I can do this. I am good. I know what I'm talking about. I've been doing it 20 years, but you just don't seem to think that that's relevant, and it is. So yeah, that's definitely a comfort zone. You've got to step out of it. Otherwise, you're never going to grow. You're never going to be a better person.
Amazing. This is like a setup. I didn't know Sam was going to ask this. Sophie and Sarah, last 2 years, both launched businesses, both got great stories. Right now, mentees watching this are thinking, that's it, I'm out. I'm setting up my own business. There are employers up and down the land messaging me saying, turn your bloody podcast off. I'm about to lose all my guys as they go and set up on their own. But 2 great stories, so congratulations. Daniel, what have you got for us, mate?
How do I follow that? Christ, that's tough, isn't it? The pressure's now on, isn't it? Thank you, ladies. Obviously, we've been showing up here, Ben, haven't we? But I'll give it a go. I think I'm going to take a few of the elements from both Sarah and Sophie here. But yeah, thank you for that. I think I picked up on, just a classic for me. It's if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got. Nice cliche quote there to kick us off. And for me, it's always been about reaching I get really selfish with this, but reaching my personal potential. When I look back on my life, whatever that might look like, whenever my time comes, I've had some personal situations. My most recent was a week ago today. So this time last week, I was in hospital with my dad, who had an emergency operation, having got rushed in after falling off deciding to step off a roof. And I've had to go through 3 experiences with him over the last 10 years of cancer, different accidents. And what I've learned from those bad situations is again, I think one of you said it, how short life is. And it can literally change in the blink of an eye. So to be able to push yourself to do the best you possibly can, which again, I think you both said inadvertently, I think is something that, thrives me and pushes me. So I take that and apply that into, a state agency, which is, I skived college. to be an estate agent. I always wanted to get into property. I always wanted my own business in property, and I've been fortunate enough that I had I took the leap of faith 5 years ago. It was five and a half years ago where I just stepped out. I knew I couldn't stay where I was, let's just say. I was going nowhere fast. And I've looked back and looked forward every day since, because as you say, it's still scary every day. That's the honesty. But I wouldn't have chosen the last 5 years any other way for what I've learned through myself, if nothing else. So yeah, thank you.
Great response. 3 fantastic responses. I won't be derogatory to past guests, but if Carlsberg did responses, we're close there with those 3. So 3 great sets of advice. My feedback is stepping out your comfort zone is that, we talked about it actually before we went on, the fun and fear factor. That's how you know you're alive. Sophie, you said it, you didn't use the word meandering, but I often throw that word around. I don't want to meander through life. I want to have experience to show for it. Don't get me wrong. As I've aged and have 3 daughters and mortgages, and you're not quite maybe so brazen with the stepping out of the comfort zone, but every now and again I try something. And this year I did the scariest thing I've ever done in my entire life, which is a statement for a 40-year-old. I took part in a dance competition, the Agents Giving charity ball. And people think I used to play rugby at a reasonable level. You can't necessarily tell here, but I'm 6'1" and a bit of a lump. And I was always the smallest person in the position I played. And every week would be a fight. And sometimes that's sort of what rugby is. And that is a walk in the park compared to stepping on a dance floor and doing that. I've never felt anything like what I did 5 minutes before I was meant to go out. So someone said to me, would you do it again? No, never. And someone also said, would you recommend I do it? And I said, no, don't do it to yourself. But actually, it does mean now, conversation with Ian from Nurture, and he said, well, now at least you've got, you'll never be scared of anything again in your life. And that's true. That I don't think I'll ever so that out of comfort zone thing has presented an opportunity for me to never be scared, which I think is also the definition of a psychopath. So good stuff. All right, guys, great responses. Let's get on to the meat. Everyone knows it's coming. Anyone who watches this, we cover the main things that are sort of doing the rounds in estate agency world. There's no getting away from it. Interest rates went up, so this is going out a week after interest rates went up. So they've increased rates, 14th consecutive rate rise. We're now at 5.25%, 0.25% rise. Not so long ago, as in 3 weeks ago, everyone was penning it's going to be 0.5%. Inflation, a little bit better than expected, so it's only 0.25%. Few things to sort of discuss. So 87% of all mortgages at the moment in the UK are on fixed rate. So, is it such a major impact as the media would have you believe? I'm not suggesting it's not having a big impact on certain people, certain demographics, but of course we've also got 13% of people that aren't on fixed rate mortgages. Rates started to reduce actually in the week before the interest rate came up. So mortgage lenders started to reduce the cost of borrowing because they maybe see the wood for the trees, which is good news. And then I'm just going to paraphrase a piece that was actually in the trade press. Hamptons, London-based estate agency, really good agency, really good brand, have produced some data which I thought was quite interesting. So I just want to paraphrase the amount of buyers moving out of London to other areas where it's more affordable, and they're saying a part of that is around interest rate rise and basically the cost of paying a mortgage. So I don't want to bombard you with stats, but 7.7% of all buyers outside London started life in London or came from London, which is a big chunk if you think about the whole of the country. So lots of moving out, lots of moving to the peripheries of London and commutable distances. First-time buyers accounted to 30% of all people trading out of London, so moving out of London. A decade ago, it was only 12%. So it shows you there's a massive jump. 10 years ago, 12% of buyers moving out of London to other areas were first-time buyers, and now it's 30%. What they don't say is that arguably people are first-time buyers later in life than they were 10 years ago now. So there's probably a little piece around that. So my question to you guys is, our job is to advise the consumer and give the great feedback. We've got 2 letting agents, which is, I mean, it's worked out perfectly here, because so many of the consumers that are impacted by this are actually connected to lettings, more so than the 87% perhaps who are owner occupiers on fixed rate mortgages. What are we talking to our clients about at the moment, and what's the feedback from our clients? How do we help them get through this period? Sarah, I was going to throw it to you first. What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of see two sides of it at the minute. I'm getting quite a lot of panic from landlords that although they may be currently in fixed terms, they're due to come out in the next 12, 18 months. And the stress tests as well as the interest rises have changed. So the rent's got to be higher and they're not sure they can reach it. So there's quite a bit of panic out there. But I've been trying with newsletters and email campaigns to, keep on top of informing them of where we are at the minute and not to panic. There's always things that we can look at to make things easier for them, make it, their return on investment better, or, how they can make changes for EPCs and things like that are all having a bit of an impact when you add it with the interest rate rises. So it's a strange market at the minute. I have to say, I think a lot of landlords are panicking. I know my latest figures, I've got 6% of my landlords are looking to sell now. And are asking for valuations, and I don't do sales, so that's been interesting for me learning that side of it. Daniel waving at me over there.
Well, as long as he's not putting his hand up there, okay.
So yeah,
opportunity, Sarah. That's all.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's been very interesting for the last few months. But it's just trying to keep them calm for me. That's what I'm trying to do, is give them the right information and try and keep them calm and not panic and throw things away that their retirement investment is still viable, kind of thing.
And of the 6% of landlords that are looking to sell, which I appreciate, this might be an anecdotal response for you because it's a lot of data analysis possibly, are they quoting interest rate rises, or are they talking about changes required to EPC? Are they looking at inflation? What is, is there a clear and specific, everyone's falling into one category? Or
no, it's pretty much an all-round category. So they're kind of throwing all of these things at me as reasons. So it's not just the one. I think some of them are more towards the interest rate rises because their fixed terms are coming to an end. So, I've got one whose fixed terms ending in January, one who's in May, and they're panicking because they don't see that the rates are going to start dropping that quickly. Whereas the other ones are more looking at interest rate rises when their fixed term ends in the next 2 or 3 years, but also EPC changes are going to be happening around the same time. And what about the Renters Reform Bill? That's happening around the same time. And, Section 24, they're panicking about the fact that they're going to be paying more in tax for these things. And there's just so much information being thrown at them that they're kind of like, hands up, don't know, panic.
Well, yeah, I think we can all relate. I would imagine Sarah and Sophie can relate more than most because of the amount of changes to legislation. You've now got to be a tax expert to advise a landlord on the best practices. The last 10 years have seen successive governments, in my view, really penalise the individual landlord in a view to move towards build to rent. Sophie, how are you keeping your landlords informed of everything that's going on at the moment?
So we found in our area, the landlords that are impacted most by the interest rates are the self-managing landlords. Generally, they've had the property for a long time. Tenants been in there for 8+ years and they've never done a rent increase. And so we're seeing those landlords impacted because their fixed terms are coming to an end and their obviously mortgage costs are rising. But because they haven't been reviewing their rent annually, the rent hasn't stacked up to current market value and also what the increase is. So I've seen in the last six months, especially, the rent increases that we're having to do is about an average £100 a month, when before it was 25. Okay. So we've kind of, especially with we've acquired a couple of businesses recently, and the smaller ones that they haven't done rent reviews as standard. It's kind of like only if a landlord requests it. So we're finding those landlords fall behind. So that kind of attacks your accidental landlords, your older generational landlords, especially because COVID, a lot of landlords didn't do rent increases because of COVID, and we didn't, to be fair. But now we're seeing those landlords highly impacted. And along with everything else coming along, it's a scary place. They're looking at, I had one landlord come in with a BBC article about this, and I was like, you're okay, look, this is statistics, these can be, you know, squished round to make the point that they want to make. So it is a lot of calming with landlords, offering them advice, rent reviews, portfolio reviews, especially targeting those let-only landlords. I think the statistic at the moment is 80% of landlords are still self-managing. I know in our area it's about 40%. So those are the landlords that kind of need our guidance at this time of what should my rent be, because the market values, I know across the country have gone mental, but particularly in Cornwall, have gone high. I think we were one of the most expensive areas out of London, according to Rightmove. I think that was the beginning of the year. I think that's changed now. But so, you know, we need to be advising our clients and kind of being that reassuring ear of, let me do a portfolio review, a rent review, team up with a mortgage advisor so then they can get some mortgage advice, and kind of tackle it that way.
So that the sort of short-sighted or really simple response that I've heard is that, well, landlords are fine. Rents are the highest they've ever been. And they can just put the rent up. Rents keep going up. Doesn't increasing the rent just cover all their costs? And you know, you guys run letting business, so I'm sure you hear things like that from prospective tenants occasionally. What's the appropriate response to that, Sophie?
I mean, the appropriate response is, obviously everyone has a stereotypical landlord in their head. A stereotypical landlord is a rich man sat on a hill in a castle, who has unlimited, when actually the reality of the demographics of landlords is that we've got a high percentage of accidental landlords. We've got a high percentage of people that kind of dabbled in it when the market was good and bank rates were low, so thought, I'll buy a property, but they're not, that's not their career. They're not career landlords. They're not portfolio landlords. So they've kind of taken it upon themselves to do it. So our response to tenants, we get it all the time, our landlord can swallow this cost, but they don't understand what landlords also have to pay out for. It's not just their mortgage. They've got insurances. They've got obviously our fees, management fees if they use an agent. They've got, and they can't, and because the tax obviously changes for the landlords, they can't claim back as much as they used to, and that's really impacted. And when at the moment the PRS is basically supporting social housing, we are seeing landlords leave, and we are going to see stock problems, and that raises rents, which then affects tenants. So, you know, the interest rates is having a bigger impact than I think people look at. It annoys me. I know you touched on it before we started, that all the headlines revert to homeowners and owner occupied. But actually landlords are a big part of the private rentals. So they are the private rental sector, they are the housing sector, and they are currently supporting social housing, yet they're not being supported.
And of that 13% that are on that are not on fixed rate mortgages, the vast majority are going to be landlords.
100%, yeah.
So they are, whilst I appreciate, there's no sugarcoating here. Anyone who's got a mortgage up for renewal or is in the process of maybe a purchase, and they're looking at things based on the last 2 years, and they're up in the next year, you know, there's no way to look at that positively. There's just not. You just need to work on some reframing possibly. And you know, if you're over the age of 30 or 40 maybe, this is life as normal. But yeah, if you're a landlord and the rates increased last week, you're feeling that tomorrow, and it's instant. Yeah. Dan, what about you in your business and how you advise clients and maybe prospective buyers around sort of good advice around what the rates are doing?
Yeah, I'm actually going to talk a little bit personally here, because literally I've got a buy-to-let property myself. Okay, so and I've had to remortgage that on August the 1st, just gone. So I fall into that category that we've just touched upon there, which I find quite interesting, you know, on a commercial level as well. So I always try and talk to people how I would talk to myself, you know, put myself in customers' shoes, is a, you know, really old phrase. And by going through that sort of situation myself personally recently, having bought another property last year as well in a rising market as well, has helped me with a lot of the conversations that I'm having or had coming into this year. I've seen a lot certainly picking up as we've moved into this year of landlords looking to sell. You know, whether that's, you know, we live in a university town where I'm from, Worcester. There's a decent uni here. The rise of, you know, COVID online learning, which I think is another point we're going to touch upon shortly, has meant that actually a lot of that market is not investing anymore, and they're actually looking to offlet them, as I think we've touched upon there as well, because there's less and less going in favour of landlords. So it is tougher and tougher for them to actually make a profit. And ultimately, that's what they're for. It's not a crude, hidden thing. They're there to make a profit, and that's how it works. And if it doesn't stack up, then they're going to look at their options, aren't they? So, on a commercial perspective with my business, I've seen a lot more landlords coming to me, with portfolios of X amount of properties. That can be 2 to 10, and they've slowly started to offload them. Some have been ahead of the curve, I think. I've got some, quite, what I call knowledgeable clients who've started to do that over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years and beyond, and then others that have kind of just getting there now. Now things are sort of changing and getting a little bit more panicky, for going back to that word. But so with my business brain on, I'm being a bit crude here for the sake of this as well. I don't mind, because as long as they're coming and they're selling, that actually generates me business with my residential sales hat on. It's a different market. It's not as nice, the reasons of why they're selling, but actually, for me, there's that transaction level volume there, which still gives me opportunity. So, and that's what I found, certainly, in the last few months.
Do you find, Daniel, that you're getting investors buying those properties?
No.
That's where I'm unsure whether I'm seeing any more investors come in.
No, and it's something, I've touched upon now on a personal level. It's something I aspired to, when I was younger. I thought, I would like to have loads of properties and this and that. I don't see that anymore. It might be different in different areas across the country, but the clients and the landlords, I don't, because I'm dealing with them on that side, on the exit side, I then understand the reasons why personally they're doing that. I go, what? Yeah, why? So why would I do that? And I understand totally then why they're selling. So no, they're not buying. So that slows down that side of the market, or it takes another sector of the marketplace away from the potential candidates of purchasers. Absolutely, you're right.
And so, of course, the net position is, if more and more landlords unload, the general view is that a landlord investment property, and not across the country, but also falls into the first-time buyer category a lot of the time, not always. But if the first-time buyer category sees an influx of property, basic supply and demand dictates that pricing will soften. And we all know if pricing softens at the first-time buyer level, it ripples its way up the market. So the impact of rate rises, as much as people don't like to talk about it, is that it might see a softening on pricing. But then the counter to that, and to allude to Dan's point a moment ago, is with a softening of pricing, you normally see a bit more volume. So the transactions will come in. And so if the market needs to go through this process of realigning itself, and we're not in 2008 where people are going to be selling at horrendous negative equity, the vast majority have got huge equity in their property if they've owned them for an extended period of time. The last 2 years alone has sort of helped with that process.
Absolutely.
So yes, I think for me, it's really about appropriate and authentic feedback and communication with the consumer. I saw a really, really good post on social media the other day. It was an agent talking about what pricing's doing and what it might do and how interest rates might affect it. And he was basically saying that I'm trying to talk to consumer. It was written in a bit of a sort of almost comedy style, paraphrasing how a consumer might attack him. You said the prices were going to go up, and now you're saying they're going to go down. And I think the consumer is confused. I speak to estate agents that are confused, and we do it 24/7. You guys know your markets inside out, but right now it's really difficult to get your crystal ball out and talk about what's going to happen in 12 to 18 months. And that, I think, for me, is the most important point. If I'm talking to a consumer and they say, look, what do you see happening next year? Say, no, absolutely not. You're not going to trap me.
Ben, that's been, I'm going to backtrack there to you. Sorry to interject. But yeah, hasn't that always been the same within reason, particularly over the last few years? I go through, look at these ladies here who've set up these fantastic businesses in a very, very tough market and time. Kudos to you. I go back to 5 years ago when I set my business up. Brexit, we then had COVID. I couldn't foresee these things. We've now got this current crisis, and I would say in a year's time, 18 months time, 2 years time, there'll be something else that's going to have an effect. I don't know quite what it will be, but there'll be something else there, so there'll be something there. How it's going to affect the market and the prices is the golden question, granted. And also you used the word softening, I think, but I think it's softened already. this year in terms of the
I think
price?
it probably depends where you are. Different areas of the country. Some, the northeast have got plus 4% year on year, which is astonishing, really, when you think about market conditions. But yeah, I think some areas certainly have been affected already. Last 12 months have seen prices sort of falter slightly. I'm just really reluctant to talk about the national housing market because certain property profiles in our own town, some will fly off the shelves at a certain price point on a certain road, whereas others could be on the market for months and months. Dan, one of my frustrations is when agents use the term normal market.
Hang on.
What does that even mean?
Did I say that? Did I?
No, you didn't. I think that's the point you were making. I think that's exactly the point you were making, is that there's no such thing as a normal market, is there? There's, what does that even mean? People said at the start of this year, we're going to return to a normal market. I'm like, what is that? What are we returning to? What's a normal market? In 20 years of agency, it's going like that, it's going like that, or it's going like that. But which one of those three is normal? It's complete fugazi.
Yeah,
the last 5 years.
Tell me, because I'd say 15 years ago, like May 2008 is when I started. So I've been. I'm sorry.
What you don't know about Dan is he's actually only 19 years old. That's how tough it is starting in May 2008. It is a horrible time to start. Listen, mate, I'm the same. I launched my business in September 2008, my first business.
Okay.
And listen, I'm only 15. It's tough launching in those sort of conditions. But to your point, I think the last 5 years in particular, or the last 4 years, have really highlighted that you just don't know what's around the corner. No one. Brexit that should have been a quick thing lasted 4 years. COVID, no need for feedback on that. The Bank of England 12 months ago predicted we'd be in a recession by the end of 2022. Now, I appreciate that's not their job, but for them to make that bolder statement and it now to be a year later and we are still not in a recession, for me, that sort of highlights that don't worry about the crystal ball. Sarah, you talked about people being in a panic about things that are going to happen in 12 to 18 months.
Can't control it.
You can't control it.
Yeah, what will come will come.
I think probably Sarah, Sophie, and I, from our lettings background, with the control freak, obsessive nature, need to know what's coming down the line. That can be a really tricky thing to, you can't 100% advise exactly what's going on. But if we, for instance, a general election next year, what does that do to the market? That in itself will throw things off and provide a skew. And lots are talking about if Labour are next in power, how does that negatively impact the property market? You know what? It
could be positive.
Exactly. Who knows? You just don't know, because Labour have never come into power after the 4 years that we've just experienced. And what's their view on the lettings? We know that they view tenant rights very differently to the current Conservative market. So what's the impact there? The truth is, nobody knows. So I'm not saying live day to day, but I think if we're really honest with the consumer, and I think effective communication is regular communication more than anything else.
I don't believe in fluffing up clients. I've never been a fluffer. You be straight down the line with them. Even when the rental reform came out and I was on phones to clients, I was just like, right, we don't know, it's 2 years that we don't know what's going to happen with this yet. You just have to be really straight, and they'll respect you more for being straight. And when we do our rent reviews and our portfolio reviews, we can only do it based on the information we have right now, because like you said, we can't predict. So I think with clients, you just need to just be honest. If you fluff them, they will get to see through your crap eventually, and then they won't respect you anymore because because you've not been straight with them. So we're all about honesty. Whether that keeps you a client or not sometimes is
but at least
I learned that the hard way.
Integrity, right?
Yeah,
you'd rather have professional integrity than lie to a load of people, and that's only going to bite you in the arse further down the line anyway.
100%.
You are long term, so you've got the right strategy there, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
As a young 17-year-old working for some corporates, when they give you the advice to just tell them what they want to hear, and you're like, yeah, okay. And then it always comes back to bite you. And that's something that I've made damn sure in my business doesn't happen. They get the honest truth. And like you say, Sophie, they either like it or lump it. It is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think the counter is where I would say some agents are probably guilty of trying to provide a counterbalance to all the negative news out there. They're not necessarily intending to lie to people, but there's so much negative press, you just can't get away from it. I've deleted my Sky News app because I'm just sick and tired of the world ending. On a daily basis, Sky News tell me the world's about to end. So as someone who you know, Dan, you said think about how you wanted to be spoken to. Last week, Steve Wayne was on and he said, I talk to consumers how I expect someone to talk to my mum. And I get that. That's a really nice way to think
That's
about
nice.
it.
Yeah.
So you sort of, you get this sort of protective need to not necessarily fluff things up, but people sometimes fall off the other side and they go too extreme and everything's going to be fine, everything's wonderful. And then no, it's not wonderful. It's just life. And it's not your problem. It's not my problem. It's just a problem. And we're just dealing with it together. So yeah, okay. Good advice is regular, honest advice. How good to hear 3 agents say that, eh?
Oh.
Get this. This might make Sky News that 3 agents or 4 agents have agreed that we could be headline grabbing here.
And
okay.
honest is in that sentence, Ben.
Well,
I mean,
that's what I'm
4
saying.
honest agents.
Oh, sorry. More than agreeing, I actually meant the honesty piece. That's actually what I meant.
It's too positive. We need to get some more clickbait there, I think.
Listen, the way the guys edit this show together, believe me, the clickbait. It's a fine art. But we try and positive clickbait as opposed to there's an asteroid going to hit us in 4 days. We don't go down that route. It's much more, well, I hope it's a bit more fun. Although when we had it was a trade press. You know what? I won't say it because the trade press are really supportive of us. So I'll leave that alone right now. Okay. Subject number 2. It's been around a bit. COVID really, really brought this to light. It's the work from home culture. What an awful abbreviation WFH is. I mean, it just doesn't even roll off the tongue. I don't know why it's so much easier to say work from home. So what we saw in COVID is that people were able to work from home. What we've seen from a London perspective, and I talk about London because that's where we're based, and this is not a London show, I can just give my own experience, is that lockdown 1 sent a lot of people in different directions. Yeah, there's a lot of apartments in London, for instance, and people wanted outside space and they wanted maybe an extra room to be able to work from home in. What we saw the last sort of 18 months is people coming back into London because they've moved out and they had this wonderful dream that I'd move out to the country. And, you know, Rightmove reported for the first time in the history of Rightmove, one of the top search terms was views. We want a nice view. I mean, talk about what a country we're living in where what's most important, I've got to have a lovely view. Good for you guys. That's wonderful. It's brilliant, consumers. But they're moving back because they want their friends, their family. They want good Wi-Fi. Not that you hillbillies who live in the middle of nowhere don't have great Wi-Fi.
No. As a Cornwall hillbilly, I will agree. The Wi-Fi down here is shocking. And when we had the mass exodus of London people coming down, I had to say on the phone, I was like, you do know we've only just got super fast in some areas.
Oh man, I don't know how you. Honestly, I don't know how you do it. When first world problems, when my Netflix freezes, it's the end of the world.
Yeah, but I've got a beach 3 minutes from my front door, so it swings and roundabouts.
All right, yeah.
Well, it's not. It is for you, Sophie, but I'm the furthest point from a beach, and I've still got dial-up in some places.
Oh my, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Dial-up.
Dan, you're showing your age. Dial-up is the weird noise. Do you remember that? You too young to. That one.
It used to, if your mum answered the phone while you're on the internet, it kicked you off.
Yeah, kicked you off.
You're talking to your friends on MSN. Yeah.
MSN. I know. I'm with you. Thank you.
Talking to your friends on MSN and Yahoo chat. There's one from the past. Blimey. Showing our age, girls. Okay. Work from home culture. The recruiters are now advising employers, if you want to attract the best talent, you need to be flexible. You need to allow people to work from home. Open to you guys. Is this the future of a estate agency? What's going to happen? You guys, are you work from home operators? Dan, let's start with you. What do you think?
Oh, here we go. Right, we need a big drum roll for that, don't we? Look, I think that everything has its time and place. I'm not going to sort of put my eggs in one side of each or any of the baskets there. I'm a believer of both. I've come from my agency background. I set up an office, physical high street office when I was 17, 18. That's where I started, sort of managed that for 4 years, went to a bigger chain branch with high street premises. I was sort of screaming at them for over that period of time that, they needed to make themselves more mobile, etc. Now, when I set up my business, I started it with £6,000 and my phone and my laptop. So going to have, a big shiny high street office was impossible. Not going to happen. It was me, my phone and my laptop and my LinkedIn profile and my Instagram page or whatever. You know what I mean? So that was not that I was ever against high street agency or that I am against it. But that was needs must in my personal situation with when I took that leap of faith. Over that period of time, I've monitored it daily. I still do. there's part of me, that little bit of ego in me that wants to go and have a big shiny office, in my local town where I'm from. But would that change my business today or tomorrow? Yes, it would. Do I think it would be positive or negative? I'm not sure. We have an office which is not high street based. We're not there Monday to Friday. We have online meetings every day, capable, but we have team meetings on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, where the team come into the office, and they're structured, agenda driven, and they're pretty damn efficient, in terms of what we do. And when we do have, again, a bit of a flex on top of that, if people do want to sort of dip in and dip out, for me, that's worked over the period of time with the shifts that we had with COVID, etc. Where do I see that going in the future? I'm always very, very open and honest to say, if all of a sudden I'm from Worcester, if we haven't gathered already, big up the Worcesters. But if they all start walking down Worcester High Street today or tomorrow, the buyers and the vendors, what do I do, or what am I going to do? I'm going to go and have an office there, or be where they need to be. It's about where that market is going, and my team at the moment like that flexibility. They like coming in for the team meetings. They like to have that option, but they also are very good, on the road independently. And actually, where do I want them as a business owner is really doing appointments, which is not in the office all day. So I've gone through that relationship with it. There we go. That's my speech on it for now. Critique as you will.
Pardon?
Critique as you will, but I'm open. Yeah,
I think the fact that you've got that experience makes your feedback really, really valuable, because the truth is, estate agency, not going to be popular here, at times can be quite pale male stale. It's a lot of the same people saying the same thing, and then something new arrives, and instead of embrace it or engage with it, I'll just keyboard warrior it up, and I'll have my opinion without giving it due consideration. I used to be critical of people that would call into the business and say, I can't come in, my child's unwell, I need to stay home with them. Mm-hmm. And I mean, as it happens, I'm thinking of a particular person who it happened a lot with, but that was before I had kids. And now, having 3 children under 7 and under, a week doesn't pass where one of them's not ill. There's always something. So, and I used to think of myself as quite open-minded, but that used to frustrate me. And now, I've walked in their shoes, and I appreciate it. So, your opinion, Daniel, is worth its weight in gold, because you're living and breathing it right now, as opposed to those guys that are going to be critical of us for having an opinion about working from home when this goes on the trade press. Said that now, the trade press won't be interested in this issue. Of course they won't.
Yes, they will. Ben. Come on.
Yeah. Well, don't worry, I'll push it through. I'll push it through. I'll ensure. Yeah. I'll send this to them on a really slow news day, so we definitely get picked up.
Beautiful.
So yeah, no, I mean, Daniel, that is really interesting. You started at such a young age. The word that stood out for me is ego, and I think you've absolutely nailed it. There's a lot of decisions are made by estate agents, maybe not so much by a letting agency. I think letting agents and salesy estate agents, I'm stereotyping a bit here, but different outlooks maybe slightly. But there are a lot of decisions that are made based on ego.
I've been really honest there with myself as well. I don't think I've overanalyzed it, but yeah, that's where I say, for me and my local hometown, where I'm from, where there's that sort of for somebody else, not I, mindset. And yeah, if I had the ability and the budget, would I go and have the best, shiny off? I quite like that, in all honesty. That's my honest answer. But yeah,
you're so right. So our old business was a 5-branch, West London based, 75% lettings, 25% sales business. We exited roughly 18 months ago. We were a 5-branch business because of the size of my ego, nothing else. I thought it was a really good idea. I want to have the biggest business. We're going to grow fastest. We did do things very, very quickly, and the business was reasonable. But actually, did I enjoy it once we got to 5 branches? No, not as much as when we only had a couple, and we could be with, you wouldn't see some people for an entire week because you just can't get around everywhere. And the commercials are never as strong when you have the overheads of 5 branches. You need to have 5 branches operating at a certain level. So I can hold my hands up and be really honest that I made some bad decisions based on ego, and lots of that was around commercial premises. So I think it's a great point you raise. Sophie, what do you reckon? Work from home?
We came off the high street before COVID for our lettings business. We came off the high street ages ago, didn't really impact the business. as in not for clients. Obviously for us, money business wise, it was a great help. But obviously we've just taken on our first sales office, which has got a high street position. Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes down to working from home, it's company culture thing. So, and we're quite strong on our company culture, i.e. we want our staff to not leave and like working here, and that does come down to some flexibility. There's a reason we're having problems with the recruitment in our sector at the moment, and a lot of that is down to the very stale, structured nature of the jobs. So as a woman, obviously we are more affected by the lack of flexibility in work as a general rule, because we are generally the ones with the kids or the house. Like, I know that's quite generalization, but statistically that is true. So for example, we've got two ladies that work for us who went on maternity leave, came back, asked for more flexi hours, and we did it because they're really good staff, they're really motivated, and it's worked really well for us to be flexible, and they're happy, their families are happy, their kids are happy. But it does take more work to make that an environment that will work in agency. You have to trust and not micromanage people. So that our lettings controlling nature, you have to let that go a little bit. But it does affect. I think for us, it's finding the person for the role, and so many people are so good, but they're not being able to get into these roles because of issues. So I saw a lady the other day on a Facebook group, which is Women in Estate Agency. And dear of her, she's excellent at what she does, but she put out because she got offered a role, and she asked, was there any flexibility that she could pick her son up 3 times a week at 3 o'clock? And they said no, point blank. There was no discussion, no anything. And I just thought, wow, you think that person is the best person for that role, yet you're not going to compromise on something which I think is so minuscule. Will it affect her workload? Will it affect the performance of the business? No. I think people are being overlooked just because they've asked for that. And like you said, Ben, you used to see it as an inconvenience or a bit of a frustration when people said they've got a poorly child or things like that. But the more you support those staff, the better you get from them. If you act frustrated about it, they're not going to like their job. They're not going to feel supported. They're not going to feel part of the company culture, and then you'll lose them.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, so company culture is one that I think it's fair to say reasonably obsessive about. Having the right culture, attracts the right people, retains the right people. I've always found it funny is the wrong word, but it's strange that there's such an issue retaining good people in this industry. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. If you've got good people, what are you doing that's pushing them away from your business? How do you maintain them? My question for you is, which we've discussed in our own business, as it happens, where we are a full sales business now. So working from home for the vast majority of the roles just doesn't necessarily work anyway, actually. But how do you maintain a strong company culture with people that are working from home? How do you bring them into your business and ensure they get the feelings around company culture and really get it? How do you tick that box? They sound like it's something it's not important. How do you cover that?
Yeah, I don't think we don't have anyone that's fully remote working from home. We did have someone request, but we did turn them down because of that reason. We're happy to be flexible around, school holidays, things like that, or pickup times, but it can't be an everyday thing. Because like you said, if you're not part of that morning meeting, or you're not, you can do it virtually, but I think all of us by COVID just didn't want to be on a Zoom. This obviously is not included.
This is wonderful.
This is lovely. But people, you don't get the same kind of atmosphere. So we do it more as a flexi thing rather than a work from home or in the office. It's a hybrid kind of way of working, which you find it does depend on the person and the trust and the processes you've got in place, but you can make it work. Not so much in lettings. Yes, sales, I'm struggling more with it, but this is the first time I've ever run a sales office, and I am struggling with the people working from home and not being in the office, because I think estate agency, because it's still a high street office, the expectations of the vendors are still 9 to 5 high street office, and so I do struggle it on the sales side more than the letting side.
So if I may, yeah, I think it depends on like your audience and your target market as well. My audience coming from a 90s boy, as I call it, as I've grown up and what's enabled me to go into business, very social media savvy. So my clients, they don't, when I started, and I still have this debate, I try and get them to come to my office, which I've got, they don't come into the office. I'll go to them, or I'm on they've Instagram messaged me or something. And that's how I've grown up with that, if that makes sense. So, but I appreciate, and I'm very aware that if I wanted to go as a business or as a person into what I call, a different town, for example, and have an impact, certain towns work differently from my previous agency experience, and their markets are differently because I have a reputation locally, and I'm out and about all of the time, and that sort of feeds the funnel, if that makes sense, from lead generating. I'm very conscious of that, and I've worked hard to get that. So no, I sorry.
I think because we're Cornwall.
Yeah.
We are Cornwall, and I know this is extremely stereotypical, but I can say that because I actually am from Cornwall. Is that our demographic of vendors are the older generation. Yeah. They still want to see their property in the paper. We do not do that anymore, just to clarify. But they still expect their property in the paper. They, and it is quite old school, and it is a bit more scary to come off and do something a bit more modern. We're quite forward thinking with our lettings. We've always been very forward thinking, social media, but obviously we do have a student portfolio, so that works really well with the university and the student portfolio, and the residential really. But we are struggling with the sales side, just because the client's expectations are more old school, and it's trying to break that. And we want to make our estate agency more modern, but at the moment we're still very new to this. We've only had the sales agency since March, so and we've only just rebranded, which was that was shocking enough that we rebranded. So I think it's going to be slow progress, but there's a lot I want to do on the sales. But that
doesn't mean you can't do it without the office as well. That's the
other. It's models we've looked at, but it's interesting to working with our team as well and changing their mindset on what a estate agency can be.
I think the other thing to consider is culturally where the team are right now versus where maybe you want to move towards. An old school sales environment is buzzy, there's energy, there's people, and you call them bodies if you like, but it's very difficult to create that atmosphere with less people in the environment, especially in a small sales environment. That can have such an impact if it's, in my view, not effectively managed and gradual transition. You go from having I don't know, the average estate agency, normally 2, 3, maybe 4 salespeople in the room. You start allowing half of them to work from home. People that are in the room, they feel very differently about being in this space on their own with less people. There's less energy. There's less when they take a difficult call. How do we get each other buzzed back up? I haven't got people to vent to or to talk to or to get me back over the hill. One of the reasons we took ourselves, we were a 5-branch business previously, and we scaled and we went to 1 super branch. It was insane. There were 36 people in this 1 branch. It was a crazy sales floor, but it was fun, really, really fun, really good energy. And what we had is all these experienced people in a confined space, which meant when someone new came into the business, they were able to pick up on things so quickly. Their learning would be just through the roof because everyone was right there. And so, I'll throw it to you. We talked a little bit about culture and the different models that are out there. How do you cover off? So culture, I think, is still hugely important, but the flip side, how do you cover off learning when someone is working remotely? If you introduce someone as a work from home member of the team, how do we cover that base? Even if someone goes hybrid and they're 50% in the office, 50% working from home, how do we get people up to speed quick enough with culture, business practices, SLAs, that sort of stuff? What do you think?
I think, sort of going on a tangent, but based on what you said originally, you said recruiters are saying that to get the best talent, you've got to offer work from home. I actually disagree with that because I think it's dependent on the person. There are people that I've worked with in agency, especially during COVID, who absolutely hated working from home. They were just like, when can we come back in the office? Especially for those.
I know, I'm breaking my own rule. I don't care.
It's really hard, and especially I found with the younger people who were working for us, who were, you know, still living at home with mum and dad and were actually working in their bedroom. So they were kind of like, you know, desk at the end of the bed, spending 24/7 in their bedroom, and they were like, we want to come back in the office. And I think that's the thing, like Sophie has said, is it's about the flexibility. It's not necessarily about this role is permanently work from home or this role is permanently in the office. It's about meeting the needs of both the business and the member of staff. You know, and I think from the culture perspective, I've always quite liked the idea of inductions, and that be, you know, you're working alongside somebody, maybe someone senior in the team, that can teach you that culture and the way things are done, and all the different things that we're working towards, and the targets and everything else, and the customers, and which ones to avoid and which ones to speak to, you know, and which ones like email and which ones like phone calls, all those different little niggly things that you get within a business. I think that's all part of the induction process before you're then going, right, so this is how it's going to work going forward. And again, it's dependent on the person. You might find somebody comes in and picks that up really quickly. 1 week induction, they're off, they're flying. But you might have somebody else who's maybe a 5, 6, 7 weeks, likes to learn a bit more, is a bit of a slower mover, but still a great member of staff. So for me, it's about the individual people and the flexibility that the business has with them, which is probably not an answer to the question you've just asked me, but that's my view on it.
I think you're right. I mean, I think all of us have landed on it's about what works for the business and the individual, which requires a level of flexibility. I think you mentioned something earlier, Daniel, when we were talking about landlords, and that it's an investment, and an investment is looking for a commercial return. And I think it is unfair sometimes that people don't see a estate agency as, from an employer's perspective, they need to make sure the business can function as it needs to, and create the best environment or position for their team. And those two things need to go hand in hand. And it's important that we're pragmatic enough to see it in that way. The flip side is the example you gave, Sophie, that was in the Facebook group the other day, where there's no consideration at all. It's black and white, and this is where we are, and that's the end of it. But for every business that says no, I think there's another business out there that's going to say yes, and it's just an opportunity for somebody else to capture someone great and bring them into their business.
And I think as time goes on, those people who have said no won't be in business.
Yeah, I mean,
because I think their staff that are that like the way it's done, that old school kind of mentality, will at some point leave, retire, whatever, and they won't be able to get new staff because the newer, younger generation aren't happy with it being very rigid and strict. They want that flexibility. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as an aside, and I won't go down this road because we've got time constraints, but this always happens. My major concern is about the current new generation entering the workforce are a little bit too used to getting everything their own way.
Oh, yeah.
Just a little bit.
Sorry.
And so that is a concern that the point you raise is absolutely right, Sarah, that employers that take an old school approach may struggle in the future, 10 years down the line, maybe. But we've got to address this. Well, if I can't have it my way, then I'm just not gonna do it, because that's just not how the real world works. But I said we won't go down that road because we've got 14 minutes left, and that is at least another 90 minutes worth of chat. So good feedback. Work from home, general consensus. It's a blend. Finding the blend that works for you, your business, your team. And yeah, from a culture perspective, not full time from home. Great induction. Spending time together. I always down on the word care. If you care enough about your team, you'll find a way to make it work, whatever that might be. All right, guys. Now we're bang on time. This is amazing. We're going to talk about your favorite agent, the best agent you work with, someone that you'd like to highlight, and then give us why you think we should be aware of this agent. Hopefully, we can follow them on social media because that's happening quite a bit, and I think that's a really that's one of the huge benefits of social media, is that we now get along as agents better than we used to. So, Sophie, I'm going to come to you first. Who is the agent you would like to highlight and why?
I've been really lucky, actually. Talking about right back to if you go to pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. When I came part of Property Mark, and then we joined HMO Network, which also Sarah is part of, which is another great network of property professionals all wanting the same thing. I've met so many people that it's really difficult to pin down one. I have to say that Angharad Trueman is someone who inspires me on the daily, just because she's running agencies up in, so currently she works for Andrews, but she was at CGT, and it's just because she's managed to change a business round from a small agency to a big agency running 5 branches, and now she's gone up to Andrews, and she's now running the whole of the southwest, and how she's managed to do that, and her team culture she creates is amazing. If anyone follows her on social media, I mean, we've taken quite a lot from Harry of what she's done with team culture, of being able to get your team like quiz nights once a month, and little team challenges, and she works really hard on team culture. And like I said, that's something we've really wanted to work on, because if you've got a really happy team, you've got really happy clients. And it's better customer service, and your team is your core, is your everything. And she's really inspired me to get our team more involved and feeling more as a family, especially as we've grown so quickly in the last 8 months. I mean, we've got 18 staff now, so we've wanted to keep that company culture really strong and kind of create an ethos. And she's really she's quite inspirational at doing that.
Very good shout. She's on in 2 weeks. So, good stuff. Sarah, who would you like to shine a spotlight on?
So mine's a little bit more from a personal perspective, but it's actually a previous agency I worked for, is Gatekeeper, who are based in Witney, and they're one of the managing directors, Pat Brady. At the time of working there, I was a very different person and didn't particularly enjoy it. Pat's aware of this, so it's not a negative thing. But the things that they taught me about estate agency and lettings, and about myself as a person, and how to grow and how to treat staff. Pat's view is that he is teaching staff to be better when they leave. So it's not about trying to keep them in the business, it's about training them to be the best they can possibly be, whether that be with them or with another company when they move on. And that was a big thing for me, and making me realize actually I can do more than what I was doing for myself, and is the reason why I went on to start my own business. So yeah, they have definitely been a huge force behind me, and I still work really closely with them now. You know, they don't do HMOs, which I do, so we work really well together, and I do a bit of work for them. So yeah, I think they've had a massive impact on my life and career.
Lovely. I completely agree with Pat Brady. Train people, coach people to the best of their ability. If they stay with you, great. If they move on, it doesn't matter, because you've had a great period of time with them. I find it so funny that people are worried about people moving on. Imagine keeping people that are really bad in your role, keeping them in the business. Isn't that worse? Yeah. Great advice. Oh, excuse me. Great approach from Pat. Dan, who would you like to shine the light on?
First of all, Ben Madden from Fine and Country, obviously. But no,
where's my bell? Where's that bell?
Oh yeah. Seriously, no. Although I've never actually worked for Fine and Country, I know a few of your compatriots, Ben, through different streams, you know, locally and nationally, and I think that's through social media in terms of how you guys portray yourself out there. So, although you know, I'm actually joint agent with one of your colleagues.
Oh, really?
Which I'm doing a video on a property on Thursday as a joint agent. So I think that's nice. And I think that's a really, really important thing for how I feel the industry is going to move as an agent, sales-wise, is that working together, which leads me in quite nicely. So I genuinely meant that, Ben, as well, through Fine and Country and the network there. If I wasn't doing what I was doing under my own steam, I'd be screaming at all you guys very loudly, is what I'm saying, and I did, and certain people know that. But that leads me in Agents Together as well. You know, I had a mentor through Agents Together over COVID, actually, over that period of time. I can't say who it was. That's not a Houdini thing, but I just can't. But Sam was fantastic in sorting that out for me. And yeah, There we go. That's a carrot, isn't it? There they go.
Yeah,
There
well,
we go.
the main, yeah,
And
Houdini.
there's a few other people which I know you know as well. Adam Horton, sort of you know, I'd class him a friend in business. We're not, you know, I'm West Midlands, Worcestershire, nowhere near each other. Ad is somebody, you know, I met him the week before he rebranded with the new Hortons brand. Just before I started my business, we met up in Birmingham, and we've sort of kept in touch ever since. And that ability just to reach out to him or somebody like that who's going through sort of similar things, timings. Kudos to Adam Horton. You know, I've had a few things recently which he's been really, really good to me on.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a nice
absolutely
guy.
Thank you, Adam. Then a little bit further afield, this might irk a few of the fine and country boys, but or Knight Frank particularly, mentioning their names, but Dan Daggers. I think has a fantastic social media presence, and I've reached out to him a few times. Really like what he does, the style of how he does it, how he's obviously escalated himself. So that's somebody that I, you know, again have that little bit of aspirational to look up to. And then this is very ego driven. Sorry, hey Ben,
keep that listening.
Ben, you asked.
Go for it.
Ryan Serhant.
Serhant, eh?
You can't ask me that question without me mentioning Ryan Serhant. Somebody that, you know, I would literally fly to America to and knock on his door as well is Ryan Serhant, because $1 Million Listing New York, when I first watched that episode way back when, how he's built personal brand. If you want to know about personal brand, I think he's just a shining example of how to do it. There we go.
Are you sure? You haven't got one more?
You know, always more, but
I was only told we could only have one. So now
Oh yeah, I was gonna say if we're gonna go for lots, then yeah, I'll add Neil to that.
Letting agent versus estate agent. You know, girls, you understood the assignment. Dan is going to take every opportunity to maximize his time, but he has shouted out some great people. Agents Together in Sam, brilliant. Adam Horton, really nice guy. Dan Daggers has got probably the most aspirational social media of any estate agent in the country. Yeah. And Ryan Serhant is the original celebrity estate agent. So yeah, it's a good list. So Sarah, Dan took 20 minutes to give us his. You're going to probably knock it out in 30 seconds, right? Who's yours, Sarah?
I did mine. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Go back round.
Dan, you throw me off.
Give him some more.
Yeah, that's it.
It's almost holiday time, Ben. It's almost holiday time.
I've got 6 minutes, and I'm just. I was literally 10 minutes ago. I think I said we're ahead of schedule, and now we're behind schedule. It's thrown me right up. No, I'm kidding. Sarah, let me come back to you with what I should be asking. I was going to come to you next. What's your wonderful, great, fantastic piece of advice? So every week, a great piece of advice agents could follow right now that will help them.
Well, my piece of advice has kind of been ruined by the lovely Sam question right at the beginning, because it was to step outside of your comfort zone.
How frustrating for you. Okay.
So yeah, this is way outside my comfort zone. Sophie's already mentioned the Women in Estate Agency group. That's where I saw the invite for this, and it was quite a funny conversation because the post was, who would like to join Ben on his podcast? And I commented, podcast, no video. Yes, I'm in. And the reply was, no, it is on video. I was like, God damn it. So yeah, step outside of your comfort zone, because yeah, you just need to grow every day, do things that scare you. Otherwise, like Dan said with the cliche, you never change anything. Yeah,
it's good things on the other side of fear.
Yeah,
that Women in Estate Agency Facebook group, I've got to get in there because I've had so many people now lined up to be on the podcast. I've got to break in somehow. There's a lot of action. Megan is my spy. She gets me into the group via her social media, so we can get, and that's how I got access to you guys. Not all of you, obviously, Dan. Dan, I'm going to come back to you. What's your great piece of advice for agents out there?
Okay, this is Christian Stockquote, who's also part of Agents Together. You might know him as well, but he always taught me, and I look up to him greatly. You do the best with what you've got in front of you at the time, and if that turns out, whatever that turns out to be in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you can't look back and regret that, because you've done the best you thought you could at the time with what you've got in front of you, whatever that may be. And if you apply that to everything in life, I go through things where I think, oh, what am I going to, am I going to regret this? But I've done the best with what's in front of me, and I can only take that forward. So there we go on that.
Lovely advice. Sports analogy: don't leave anything on the field. Go as hard as you can, and if you still don't win, at least you can say you tried, you did your bit. That's great advice. Lovely. Sophie, big finish. Don't let us down here, but it needs to be
no
amazing.
pressure.
No pressure.
Mine is about leaving your ego at the door, because I do find this is very we are egotistical generally in this sort of thing. But for me, the best thing I did was to step out of my bubble and go, no, I don't know everything. No, I don't know, and speak to people and network with other people, like great agents, like on here, like the people we've seen over social media, like network with them and learn from them. One of the biggest things I've done in the last 18 months is get out of Cornwall and go and visit some great conferences, other estate agents, and learn from everybody. I think collaboration is a must, and I think Daniel touched on that earlier about being joint agents on a property. It is the way the industry is going to go. It drives me nuts that in our own town other agents won't speak to me just because I'm in the town and I'm an agent. It drives me nuts. I'm like, collaboration, we're all in this together. And things like this podcast brings people together about talking, like, you know, you're not alone. And I think one of the biggest things, is network and learn from other people, because you don't know everything, and you might pick up some really good things just by having conversations with other agents.
I asked for a big finish and we got it. Very nice. I'm a convert the last few years, maybe similar to you, Sophie, that I ran a very insular business. We knew our stuff. We attended different groups and training. We're obsessive around training, but not enough agent to agent stuff. And, as it happens, sort of joint, that sort of agency type exists in London, has done for a long time. But the collaboration thing doesn't so much because of buyer representation. But I think we're at this beginning of a transitional period in the estate agency. How long it takes for it to progress right through, who knows? But in the meantime, you may as well make some friends on the way and learn some stuff. There's no point, wasting the opportunity to get around good people, because you can't get away from the events. Every week there's another bloody event at the moment. But actually pick the ones you like the look of and go and be a part of it. Absolutely. I may as well put a plug in for the Baldock Brothers Directors Dinner, which is the last Thursday of every month. It's always in London. And that is just a group of estate agents who get together, have some food, have some beers, and have a chat. And it's not pitchy. It's purely estate agents and purely directors. And I started going to that at the start of the year, and it's really good. It's good fun. And it's a good opportunity to talk about what's going on in your business in a less formal environment. And of course, you look forward to the Friday hangover. So we have come to the end of the podcast. Thank you so much, guys. You've been brilliant. It's been a lot of fun. I hope for you as much as it is for me. We are going to hand over now to Chris Watkins with his regular Watkins whimsy, which is not easy for someone with a speech impediment to say. And we're just going to say goodbye. Thank you so much, guys. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Just take a second, boys and girls, to realise that we're only on this earth for a very short period of time, and we're not defined by our work. We're defined by our actions to our friends and the difference we make. Look at our great friend Sanjay Gandhi, who's been diagnosed with a very rare form of bone cancer in his skull. And what did he do? He could have gone in on himself, but he's going out there helping people, helping you. I think it's just important, boys and girls, that you remember that you are not going to be judged on your market share or your KPIs. Go out there and make a difference to another human being. Love you all.